Welcome to the Transform podcast series, co-produced by the International Labour Organization and socialprotection.org. My name is Abidemi Coker, a consultant passionate about supporting government, civil society, and partners in strengthening our social protection systems in Africa. I will be your host for this 3-episode series, bringing you highlights about Transform, an initiative that is growing across Africa. Transform is a training program that supports efforts of practitioners and leaders to build social protection floors in Africa. In this podcast series, we will present the initiative's achievements 10 years since its inception. We will have conversations with guests from the continent to present the genesis of Transform as an initiative facilitated by multiple international agencies and actors. We will explore how Transform has evolved and impacted the social protection culture in the region, and how it is being institutionalized in several countries. In today's episode, we are joined by Emmy Tony Ameni, Kate Blaine, and Vincent Van Halsema to explore the story behind the Transform initiative. We will hear from our guests about what Transform is, what sets the initiative apart from other social protection training programs, and how Transform is designed to be a uniquely African program, tailored to the context of the continent and adaptive to the needs of countries and communities. Tony Ameni is an Assistant Commissioner for Programs in the Office of the Prime Minister in Uganda. He will share experiences from implementing Transform in Uganda. Kate is a Learning and Facilitation Specialist and founder of Learn to Lead based in South Africa. Kate is an instrumental member of the Transform family, having led the learning design and trained many a master trainer of Transform. Vincent is a global social protection advisor with WFP. He coordinated the Transform Hub for a time and has been a consistent contributor to its evolution, including through the advisory group. Later in the episode, we will listen to a special conversation I had with Mr. Ali Cisse, a fellow master trainer from Senegal. So welcome, Vincent, Tony Ameni, and Kate. Thank you for joining us on this first episode of the Transform podcast series.
Thanks, Abidemi. Great to be here.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Abidemi. As you all know, Transform is an initiative designed to enhance the capacity of social protection practitioners, policymakers, and also managers to contribute to establishing social protection floors in their respective countries. Vincent, can you tell us a bit about this? What are social protection floors? What is the link or the importance of training on social protection floors?
The social protection floors come initially out of ILO recommendation 202. And it's effectively setting a basic floor under which no one should be falling to be able to have access to social protection. It talks about minimum income, particularly in old age or for children. It talks about access to health. These floors are what we believe are fundamental for people to be able to thrive as individuals, as communities, and as entire societies. And social protection is required to be expanded gradually, coverage, the quality of national programs to allow people to be captured across their different life cycle needs and meet these floors. And importantly, these floors need to be progressively realized depending on the country conditions. So that's to say we need people to be better protected by national systems.
Thank you for that description. It'll be interesting to hear from Mr. Ameni about the Ugandan story. So Uganda is one of those countries in Africa that have implemented a significant number of Transform applications. What groups of people were trained in Uganda, and who did you aim to train or to reach through the training?
Uganda has really embraced social protection generally as a country because it's embedded there, Chapter 4 of our Constitution. So we have had a number of trainings for different categories of leaders targeted, both political and technical. At the national level, we have had trainings of senior policymakers who are responsible for policy formulation. We call them permanent secretaries, commissioners, especially in the office of the Prime Minister. So a number of national level technical officers have been trained. But we have also cascaded this down to the sub-county level. There was a special training transformed for district leaders coming from the West Nile region. And it has had immense impact on how they perceive social protection, and they have become very strong advocates and strong voice in championing social protection.
So really, Uganda is an interesting case because you've really trained from policymakers to the district level to sub-district level. That's quite fascinating. And I'm curious, what kind of feedback did you get, especially from policymakers? How did they perceive these trainings? What were the results of the training?
You see, the design of the transform and the building blocks really speaks to social protection as a system, as cross-cutting and diverse in context. So, one, the policymakers appreciate the unique approach in the transform methodology. But most importantly, the coordination building block has been a game changer in our country, which has influenced, especially where I sit in the office of the Prime Minister. Part of our mandate is coordination of all government programs, policies, and projects. So it has been embedded in our project and program implementation. And at the policy level, for the first time, because of the transform introduction, we have included social protection, the life cycle approach in the National Development Plan starting this financial year going forward.
Sounds really, really interesting and really important because you get buy-in both from the implementers, so people on the ground who are there to deliver services, and then also you have buy-in at the policy level and shifts in the policy direction, which is, I think, really what Transform is about, trying to help to bring about the knowledge and the skills. Would you agree with that, Vincent? Is that the gap?
Yeah, I think you're hitting the nail on the head, right? Because one-sided, you have the whole policy dialogue, recommendation 202, the social protection floors, human rights, universal declarations. But then it needs to happen at the country level. And if people don't understand what the sector is about, what it means for their context, how different things connect, and then even at the national level versus, like Tony was saying, at the district level, the localized application of what is this social protection business, that's really where the rubber hits the road, right? If in your district, this beautiful program or pension or cash transfer just has no chance of working, but something else does, or you could actually help set it up because you understand the basics and fundamentally what social protection is about and what we're trying to achieve beyond the nomenclature and the verbs and the words. And you understand that, it's a system of people that need to connect to protect people better. And that can be done with national institutions, that can be done with local services and programs, but ultimately it's about people that need to work. And that's why the Transform training, which is not just technical, it has the content about what social protection is, but it has a strong adult learning component. So it really tries to emphasize that the knowledge is often in the room, that the experts are people that can actually teach each other, that there's peer learning and exchange and networking that's happening. But there's also a leadership component, right? And it's challenging people to look inward, to think about what drives them, what motivates them, and how they themselves can be the agents of change into expanding social protection in one way or another.
Yeah, and we hear that Transform is designed with our context in mind, with the African context in mind. And so I think it'll be interesting to hear from Kate, who was part of the design of Transform, about how was that brought to life? How was Transform training designed with this African context in mind?
Yeah, I think that one of the strongest requests from the African Union was that Transform should be designed and trained for Africa and by Africa. So I think too often we take curricula imported from other parts of the world, and these curriculums simply don't fit into the African realities, and therefore the learnings can't really be applied. So Transform was designed with the African context in mind on a few levels. I think firstly, the ownership of design. And although global thinking was very much taken into account, the curriculum was built mainly by social protection experts who either currently live or have lived in Africa and worked extensively in Africa. Many, like myself, were born and bred in Africa, and a lot of the content, the case studies, the photos, the visuals in the PowerPoints, the branding, that's all authentically African. So it's all stuff that the delegates can relate to directly. And yeah, I think Transform definitely speaks our Mama Africa language. And then secondly, the master trainers themselves are all African, and usually not only just from the continent of Africa, but from the very country or region where they are doing the facilitation. This way, they can also draw on actual examples of what's going on with social protection in that particular country, and the participants can recognize their own systems from the examples that are used. And then thirdly, we tried to adopt Transform to work across Africa's diversity. So of course, despite some ignorant but still sadly prevalent thinking, Africa isn't one country. It's actually a continent consisting of very diverse countries. From a language perspective, Transform's been translated from English into French, into Arabic, into Portuguese, and very much customized with local examples for the particular countries. And then when any of the trainers go into a country, they're expected to do extensive research on that country and pick up examples and really understand the social protection system. We leave a lot of the slides blank so that they actually have to fill in what's the social protection system in that country, what's the social protection vision for that particular country. This ensures that the learning is always grounded in context. And finally, as Vincent was saying, it's very much a peer-to-peer learning. There's incredible expertise within Africa, and Transform creates that space for Africans to share African experience, either within their own country or across ministries. And often that's where some of the richest insights come from.
There really is a lot that went into designing Transform from scratch, right? It wasn't about a plug and play type of training. We've heard the examples from Uganda, and I'm curious whether these approaches, this Transform approach that is iterative and engaging and all of that, if that approach of the training package has been suitable in Uganda.
I think the unique design of the methodology is quite unique, especially, the experiential learning part of it and the engagement that it makes people appreciate local context. We're talking about what is happening in Africa, but we bring it home to Uganda. And even in Uganda, like recently we are doing in Karamoja, the sub-region. So we are bringing the unique issues for the people of Karamoja that they resonate with, that they can identify with. So it's something which is hands-on. But again, also Transform, the training brings a lot of clarity on some of the concepts. And, there's been a lot of confusion. And most people don't appreciate the difference between social security and social assistance. Even myself, at a certain point, until I was exposed to this, people didn't even know what contributory social protection is and non-contributory, and what is complementary in nature. Such confusion, where even policymakers, some of them have been arguing that the social protection is an expenditure, but because of exposure to Transform, policymakers have started appreciating that social protection is actually an investment for the country, not an expenditure. So, it has brought in a lot of clarity. For example, we have a project coming up, and the national design team requested for a special training on Transform, and it was delivered for them just to appreciate the building blocks, especially on the aspect of MIS, the Management Information System, which is informing the development of the Uganda Single Registry. Building block has been a game changer. So by and large, the leadership approach, the transformational approach, and the focus on an individual as a change agent makes it very unique, and it's been highly appreciated.
I really want to appreciate Mr. Ameni's intervention. I think it says a lot for the design of Transform, as we've been talking about. And we know that Transform has so many different methods and tools that are included. Quite fun stuff, actually. And I think it will be great to hear from Kate how all these pieces come together to kind of kickstart a transformative journey for an individual who's participating in this training.
I think when people hear the list of Transform methods, jolts, listening walks, group walk, games, they often think like, what is this curriculum? And I actually love that because, yes, it's very engaging. It's very packed full of different things. It is fun, but actually it's also very deliberate. And that's where the transformation comes. So Transform uses action-based learning as a methodology of teaching, where the participants don't just listen, they also do. And the reason for this is that when you do, you discover, you draw your own conclusions, you have that like aha moment that might be different from someone else's aha moment. As the saying goes, that a lot of us have heard a few times, tell me and I'll forget, show me and I may remember, involve me and I understand. And that's really what we aim for, because once you understand, then you can action. So the different methods mean we speak to more than just the head. We also speak to the heart. So a lecture can give knowledge, but experiences really touch the heart. And when the heart is engaged, the hands follow. That's when people act. So real transformation relies on people feeling something and therefore doing something. So it's not only about the variety of experiences that people go through, it's also about the journey. And Transform follows a learning journey. No learner is going to take on board information until their minds are right to receive it. So the first day is really getting our participants to buy into kind of the narratives that they're holding and buy into the narratives that we're bringing. So, for example, social protection is for everyone. It's not just for those living below the poverty line. Social protection is an investment as opposed to an expenditure. Social protection is a human right. These are the kinds of mindset shifts that we're looking to surface. What are the narratives in the room, and then how do we shift them? And then, as both Vincent and Tony have said, there's this leadership component that runs throughout the whole curriculum, and participants are constantly reminded that actually change starts with them. So with their own mindsets and small daily actions, and when enough individuals shift, that's when systems change. So Transform isn't just about learning social protection theory. It's really a transformative experience that gets people thinking differently and feeling differently, and hopefully ultimately acting differently.
And if I may, the physical room changes throughout the week, right? So you have all these assignments, and there's flip charts, and things are on walls, and there's colors and drawings. So by the time you get to day 5, the physical room is transformed, and the mood has transformed, because there's a very strong focus on active listening. And one of the most powerful activities is actually during day 1, where you have the paired listening dialogue, and you put 2 people together, and they go and they have to speak uninterrupted about quite personal things. And usually when people start off on that, it's a bit of a shock, because they are almost forced to get out of their shell. But they always come out feeling refreshed and empowered, and so much more open to not just sharing, but listening to each other, right? So pairing all that together, it really is a special and very deep and powerful experience that participants go through.
Yeah, I must agree. I remember that in one of my first trainings, we actually had people cry. It was really overwhelming and powerful. And I mean, what an experience, because usually we go to work and we're there to work and deliver. We don't always have a chance to truly reflect on what we're doing and what the impact is and how we can influence our institutions, our systems. So I think, yeah, it truly can be quite a powerful experience.
I think it might also be nice to talk about the master trainers themselves, right? Because these are often practitioners, and Abidemi, you yourself are a master trainer. And a lot of them are practitioners, they're Africans. They haven't really, in some cases, been given a chance to talk about their sector and their work that they've dedicated years, if not decades, in a structured way. So there's 2 benefits. One, the people that have these master trainers come from other countries. You'll be in Uganda, and you'll have a Kenyan, you'll have a Zimbabwean, you'll have a Mozambican, right? So you see people from other parts of the continent that are struggling with the same issues, maybe in different versions, and you can connect with them at a different level, right? But then at the same time, those master trainers feel so much more empowered when they go back to their countries and do their work. It's a virtuous cycle, I think, where they share, and then they learn from the people that they're sharing with, and they go back and help strengthen their national social protection systems further. So a lot of really beneficial extra effects of Transform.
Yeah, and Vincent, you've had the chance to really engage with governments about Transform, trying to convince them that they need to have these trainings in their respective countries. I wonder, how do you sell that idea? How do you actually bring Transform to life for the people who make decisions about how their staff will be capacity built?
I'd say that once people have been exposed to Transform, they are quite quickly converted. Right? So often you'll have a participant that's from government having attended a training. They will then recommend it for other colleagues or for counterparts from other ministries or at the district level. So often Transform, once applied, sells itself. But really, social protection training in Africa is quite weak. If you consider that sectors like health and education, which are also key social services, they've got very clear training patterns and institutions and professional cadres at national and subnational level. And social protection doesn't really have that. Civil service training centers, they might have a course on social welfare systems, etc. So showcasing that there is a curriculum that has content that's been approved by many experts, that's been applied to the African context because it's made by Africans, and that's actually endorsed by the African Union, right? That's what started the Transform curriculum. That's an attractive package. And Transform as a curriculum is actually open source and is allowed to be used for adaptations for institutionalizing within national systems. And if it can be in national schools and universities and civil service training centers, then it can be nationally funded and applied more easily and actually put into the national budget. So those are some of the ways that you go from having it being something that is financed externally to something that's adopted and embraced by countries themselves.
Yeah, and I think, Mr. Lenyi, you can come in on that because you have that experience, as you shared a little bit earlier from Uganda, in terms of how Transform has really influenced your social protection space. Could you give us an example of how it has perhaps influenced how you plan or implement social protection programming?
Yeah, thank you. This is a debate that we have had as a community of practice here in Uganda. And that, discussion that is in the corridors of the policymakers at the highest level. And we've had conversations, how can I buy in from the highest office with our president, the cabinet level, bringing it down to the level of permanent secretaries, and cascaded down. The Transform Hub is now rolling out the training of local master trainers to minimize on the costs part of it. Myself, I'm a national master trainer. So that is one way of reducing the cost. But again, it comes back to the will of the government and a buy-in that you have at different levels. But not just as for Uganda, it's not only as government, but the collaboration and partnerships that we're having with our development partners. The World Food Program has come in very strongly in Uganda to support and put a budget for Transform. And in terms of also the system strengthening for the Transform capacity and coordination arrangement. Actually, tomorrow and Friday, we shall be talking about how we can strengthen the coordination arrangement around social protection in the country. But it's influenced greatly by the Transform, the coordination building block, but without leaving the civil society and the NGOs and probably even the private sector. They need to be part of this because in service delivery, they are key in complementing government efforts.
So Uganda is just, bounding along, really pushing social protection in a very focused direction, actually, through policy. From what I hear, it's a systems thinking approach because you're thinking about how to really build capacity of those who are already practitioners of social protection, people who are in the ministries, but also those who are entering university, entering the civil service, and so on. So imagine in some years, you'll have a workforce that are trained on social protection. And I think that's a really important investment. And it seems like by demonstrating that commitment to social protection through training, you're actually also bringing in partners. You're bringing in people who can continue to support the trainings, right?
Yeah. The social protection programming is anchored in the Ugandan constitution, but we also have the National Social Protection Policy of 2015, and it's operationalized by the National Social Protection Strategy, which was developed last year. And so this demonstrates really the commitment on the government side. They're taking this very seriously.
Yeah, fantastic. When you say transform, it feels like transform should almost have an exclamation point behind it because it's like transform. It's super catchy, I think, right? Being a master trainer myself, I do get that question quite often. What are we transforming, really? Vincent, what are we transforming?
Yeah, I think it's an apt name, right? Because It is a dynamic training. It's a dynamic sector on a dynamic continent. And it's just about connecting the dots and having people really speak to each other and feel comfortable coming out of their shell. So they're even transforming themselves as they transform systems. So it's just a wonderful product that's put together in a way that was truly participatory, right? And I work for the UN, and I've rarely seen so many different agencies and experts come together on one single product for the public good that's just had a true intention to be something scalable and something that can transform a sector and the training and knowledge around the sector as well. So I second the exclamation mark and the fact that the whole name is capitalized.
Indeed. So, Kate, I always remember you telling us during trainings, because Kate is the trainer of the trainers in a sense. So, as a master trainer, I remember her distinctly about 10 years ago saying, okay, B, when you're delivering this particular activity, you have to think about this question, so what? Now what? And I actually still use that in my work. I use that on a daily basis in terms of what does this mean, for me and for the beneficiaries of whatever program or project I'm working on. So I'm wondering, why is it important for us to think, so what, now what? What was your reason for embedding this into my mind?
It's music to my ears that is stuck. I'm thrilled. What the so what the now what? I think that's really the secret sauce of experiential learning, because these questions come in the debrief stage, and that's when like the real magic of the experience turns into real understanding and real action. So if we just stopped at the activity, it would be fun, it would be engaging, but it would be a little bit of a waste of time, because it would just be an activity for an activity's sake. I mean, it's not going to result in the transformation we want. The learning happens in the debrief when we ask these 3 questions. So, for example, in the district transform, which is focused on the operational level, we've got this activity where each person takes on a particular function in the administrative system, and you stand in a circle, and the objective of the game is to kind of throw a variety of balls in the air in a particular pattern. So, of course, what happens is the balls get dropped due to poor throwing and poor catching and lack of attention. And again, while the participants are focusing on keeping the balls in the air, no one's learning anything about social protection systems. And so that's when the debrief comes in. So the what happened, the what, is the first question. And this is where participants will reflect on things like balls fell to the ground, bottlenecks developed, communication helped the process, whatever they comment on. Then the so what is the next question. What happened in this ball circle that is relevant to your administrative system? And now the participants reflect on the fact that even though they may be focused on enrollment, their ability to do their job well in enrollment affects the next person down in payments. You kind of start to go, okay, the so what is that a system is as strong as its weakest link, and actually we are a system. Or that maybe the ball was kept in the air much longer when communication was really good. So our ability to communicate well with each other and to coordinate across functions is key. And then you get to the now what stage, which is about, let's take from this activity, what can we apply to our own context? What's going on in our admin system that we can take from this activity and change, do better? So yeah, I think that journey really ensures that A, the learning lands, and then B, more importantly, that it results in the transformational thinking and hopefully transformational action. So you can see why I'm so thrilled that it's stuck.
It's definitely stuck. And I think it's an important part of what we have to try to do as master trainers. Tony Ameni, have you had an experience with the so what, now what?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's just part of the entire cycle of transform. There's usually a lot of confusion at the beginning, especially for the 5-day training. The first day, second day, people come from different backgrounds that are asking, what is this relevant to me? This only applies probably to community development. Why do you bring me from agriculture? Why are you bring me from the health or education sector? But the so what, now what definitely will come in. Why is this relevant to me? At the end of the day, how will I apply this? Where will the money come from? Such questions emerge. But again, you see, the effective delivery of transform is strongly on the facilitation skill and the preparation. Personally, in terms of the preparation that I put in the process, in terms of time management, paying attention to details, making it highly participatory and with a lot of innovation and energy, positive energy, self-awareness, teamwork with your co-facilitators. And I know it's not about me, it's about the team that you work with. So it's a complementarity you bring in. It's something that I have really enjoyed, and I find, the transform training has transformed me. It's something I really enjoy doing.
Same. It's hectic, but it's quite a lot of fun. I always look forward.
Yeah, there's a lot of learning, there's a lot of unlearning, and there's, quite a lot of relearning.
Right. So maybe to continue with what you're saying, of course, transformation is at an individual level, but ultimately, Transform is trying to reach that person on the ground. Could you give us any example about how the training may have benefited people and communities that are served by some of the people that you have trained?
Yes, even from the most recent training we had in Karamoja, or the 3 districts that we train, the district technical committee members, there's a project which is going on NutriCash, which is being rolled out, but the feedback mechanism is being really embedded in there. Also, they went back and reviewed their client charter and the complaints and appeal mechanism that previously were being ignored. The whole chain, that there can be complaints of explosion, why I choose so and so, why am I left out? There would be no feedback. So it has been strengthened. That aspect of accountability is coming out very clearly, that even now the duty bearers are able to give feedback, and I know they're open to complaints and they give reasons why probably somebody has been excluded. So there's clarity, but also, again, from Koboko district, where actually the community development officer is also a master trainer, like myself, they have really strengthened the system of data collection under M&E, and the MI system on documentation of beneficiaries to minimize on duplication of services, but also on over-serving specific communities. So we see that the blend of the transform delivery to leaders, but also the technical people at the national level, district level, has strengthened program design, has strengthened the development planning, and this is being cascaded now up to the community and the household level.
Wow, awesome to hear that evidence. And I hope that this story is being told to other districts, other regions of the country, so that they can learn from that to identify whatever issues and challenges they're facing and how best they can address those. I wanted to go back to Kate, because from what I've seen, you have become a social protection expert in your own right. Can you tell us about how Transform has shaped your professional life?
Thank you, Abidemi. That's very kind of you to call me a social protection expert. It is quite bizarre to think about how much I have learned about social protection. Your question kind of takes me back to 2016 in June, where we did our very first write shop to preparing Transform. And at that stage, I hadn't committed. I was there to look and kind of see if I wanted to take this on as the adult learning expert. And for 3 days, I was just barraged with acronyms and words and jargon that I had no idea. I didn't even know what a beneficiary was. My choice was to kind of stay firmly on the ground and quietly turn around from the edge of the cliff and go back to the work that I knew and understood. Or, the other choice was to leap into the abyss. And, at the end of the write shop, I knew I had to say whether I was in or out. And I'm so glad that I made the decision to close my eyes and jump into this amazing world of social protection. At that stage, I was on a 6-month contract to design Transform. And here I am now 9 years later, still designing and facilitating courses on social protection. So, what an honor and privilege, honestly, that is. But I think this work hasn't just shaped my professional career. It's kind of given me an entirely new professional life, actually. It's also given me the real privileged opportunity of empowering Arabic speakers, French trainers, English master trainers to train experientially, which I hope has helped them in many other aspects of their facilitation. A lot of the master trainers, they work in agencies, they do a lot of facilitation outside of Transform. So I really hope that that's helped them in those aspects as well. And I think it's really afforded me hundreds of new and exciting experiences that I don't think I would have otherwise have had. Recording this podcast being one of them.
And on the receiving end, I think it's been really a journey and a wonderful one to have someone like you who comes from that learning background, that adult learning background, to be able to ask certain kinds of questions that we wouldn't necessarily ask of ourselves, and to be able to utilize all this kind of facilitation skills, like you mentioned, in the work that we do. I must say, I do use my Transform facilitation skills quite a lot in other things.
Yeah, I mean, constantly, right? Constantly using similar techniques and trainings and facilitation sessions. Actually, today I was facilitating a peer learning group with WFP mid-level managers, and we're using actually some of the similar techniques around listening and introspection. And so it's had many, many, many follow-on applications, even beyond social protection. And I hear from a lot of the master trainers that they have had similar experiences.
Well, it's been amazing to witness the growth of so many. I mean, at Abidemi, I think we've known each other well from the beginning. And it's been amazing to see the growth of the master trainers in so many different aspects. So what a privilege.
Vincent, you were there when some of these initial language translations were being done, and when we were developing, transforming these in different languages that are spoken on our continent. What necessitated that kind of development or that transition into other languages aside from English?
Well, mostly because the continent has many different languages, and these are the main language groups that speak to some of the national languages, right? French, particularly in West and Central Africa, Portuguese, Angola, Mozambique, Cape Verde, Sao Tome, they all have Portuguese as the main language. And Arabic, because actually Transform has gone beyond Africa, right? It's currently in the MENA region. And what you found is it's not just an adaptation of language, but there's also a cultural sensitivity around some of the concepts, how some things are talked about, that needed to be appropriated to the cultures that are within those language groups. So when we're translating Portuguese, we wouldn't say certain things that you'd say in English, or you wouldn't pitch it in certain ways if you're talking about the French context. So there was just a need to widen the reach, to create new cohorts of master trainers for those languages. And now we have master trainer cohorts in not just in English, but also in French, Portuguese, and Arabic. And they've been doing applications, but also in the actual presentation of the content and material to make sure that it was appropriate for the audiences of those countries.
Yeah, that's such an interesting point, because it's really not about just translating, but it's about adaptation and relooking at the context that apply in the various parts of the continent. So as we close, I thought it would be great to hear from everyone any thoughts you may have. But I'm also curious for Uganda, that has been on the spotlight of our session today, about what the next steps are regarding capacity building, training, and how Transform is expected to be part of that.
Yeah, I can't emphasize more on that. There's so many trainings we've had so far. We really gone very far, but of course with other in-house, and we've been advocating for the hub to have maybe smaller packages that we can deliver, like in our technical committee meeting, just to refresh colleagues who are within the sector who are not really exposed to this. But again, in terms of, you asked me about the next steps. Now, as I mentioned, that we got support from World Food Program. We have developed a Transform institutionalization roadmap, and that is very clear. But in that roadmap, we have developed mainly there's a short-term, medium-term, and long-term outlook. In the medium term, a pool of national master trainers will, of course, train and accredited to deliver training in country. And I'm really proud to be part of the 13 who are accredited. But also in the long term, we are planning to integrate Transform approach into higher institution of learning. Especially I talked about Makerere University. The discussion with them is really ongoing. Recently, we had Felix Mwenge, who came from the hub, and he visited the institution and had a first-hand experience and discussion. But also integrating transform, as I mentioned, into the curriculum of the civil service, college, which is very key. But this calls for goodwill and really strategic support at the very highest level, bringing in the Ministry of Finance, but then the different ministries at the national level for the implementation part of it, and the districts and the community. So that is our outlook, and that is where we are going.
That is a truly amazing body of work that's going on in Uganda. I feel like I need to come and see. I need to come and see how this is playing out.
Sorry, I would have it host you.
And I'm pretty sure that the hub will have a plan for you in terms of, developing that approach. Colleagues, what have you learned the most from Transform as we close?
The knowledge is in the room, and we need to listen to each other and connect and bring it out. And we all get wiser and more confident if we can do that, and Transform can help us do that.
But a whole lot of small actions end up in big change.
The change starts with me, and that one candle can light a whole room, and it's a continuous learning process.
Absolutely. I've learned so much from Transform, and I've learned so much from each of you today. Thank you so much, Vincent, Tonya Meni, and Kate, for joining us on this first episode of the Transform podcast series. Transform is established in language cohorts. We have English, French, and Portuguese in sub-Saharan Africa, and Arabic in the MENA region. There's a master trainer cohort in Southern and East Africa who are English speaking, a French cohort in West Africa, and a Portuguese cohort in Mozambique. So we're a vibrant and linguistically diverse training program. For this episode's testimonial segment, we will hear from Ali Cisse, who shares with us his experience of Transform in West Africa. He's a social protection expert based in Senegal and a Transform master trainer. Ali, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure and honor for joining and talking about social protection in general and Transform more particularly.
Great to have you. Can you tell us a bit about the master trainers? Who are they, or who are we, let's say?
I remember when I started the program in 2021, it was in COVID time, and it was very exciting. And I had the opportunity to meet many master trainers originating from everywhere in Africa, very experienced people, not only on the field of social protection, but also on training issues and on capacity building. I think this program really has a chance to have experts from all the continent.
Ali, it sounds like you've met all the trainers except me. Now we get to meet.
No.
So, can you tell us a bit about the advantage of having master trainers from across the region and different parts of the regions? What is the benefit of that?
It's a big advantage in terms of disseminating the knowledge on social protection, because we can say that currently all the region in Africa are covered. So in terms of dissemination, in terms of also providing knowledge on social protection floor through Transform. Another advantage also having the master trainer in the region is, to cover different regions with different level of social protection development, the social protection strategies which are different from country to country. And so I think not only the master trainer, but also the countries that are covered, we learn a lot about social protection, and we discover so many innovative things that are being implemented in the region. So it's really a big, big, big advantage for the region, I think, for Africa to have this competence.
Could you share any examples of some of the outcomes that you have seen from the trainings that you've conducted in West Africa?
Yes. Maybe the best example for me was Ghana. Ghana started to build a very comprehensive social protection policy strategy. But when we deliver the training in Ghana, all the different main program was there. The non-contributory, the contributory one. And I think for me, that was one of the most successful in terms of ownership, in terms of how all this high-level staff really have decided to move forward based on the Transform methodology, covering all aspects of social protection. So for me, Ghana, in terms of updating their social protection system, really learned a lot from Transform. Niger also, because Niger is developing a new policy, social protection policy, and they are building capacity all around the country. And attended a training workshop where all the different high level and even the grassroots level person who are really involved attended. So I think they learn a lot from the Transform, and they really make a strong commitment in terms of using the Transform mechanism to finalize their social protection policy. And it was very important because one of the highest staff from the Prime Minister office was there during the 5 days, and it was really complicated. Also in Senegal, I think there is a strong commitment also to move forward on the policy being implemented and being developed.
So we can see that there's some kind of passion that's brewing around social protection and specifically Transform training in the West Africa region. Are you seeing any trends in Senegal with regard to social protection at the moment? And if so, how can Transform benefit or contribute to the direction that the governments are taking in these countries?
Yes, in Senegal. I think less than 2 months ago, the government of Senegal has held a big meeting on social issues, not only social protection, but also employment issue and microfinance through cooperative sector. And I think some of the participants attended the Transform training, and he focused on how the program can help the government, implement, because they have a policy, but how Transform in terms of capacity building, in terms of leadership of those who are involved, in terms also of finding innovative way of funding the policy. So yes, and the government is really committed to move forward on policy. Yeah. And all this also is linked to the social protection floor and to the UN SDGs, because the government is committed also to implement the floor and also to meet the SDGs, because most of the SDGs also are related to social protection issues.
That's so interesting. I think there's really a role for Transform. And I think it's great to tell these stories so that we can actually see where those linkages are. I'm curious now about you as a social protection specialist, as an expert. What has been the biggest impact of Transform on you?
Before joining ILO, I was teaching economics at the university, a specialized school called the National School of Applied Economics here in Dakar. So I used to train people. But when I really discovered the Transform, I was really delighted because of his methodology of delivering. Very innovative, highly participative, and a lot of flexibility. So really discovered that Transform is really a very, very innovative way in terms of how you can deliver, of course, competencies, but also leadership. And during the training session, I have the opportunity to participate in Tunisia, in Mauritania, in Ghana. I saw that the participants were really involved. When they discover that they can be part of the process, they can play a strong role in terms of social protection extension. The methodology of Transform, for me, is innovative in terms of also letting know people that social protection is system and everything is linked to each other. So even with my 20 and more years of activity of training in the field, it felt very exciting for me. And I learned a lot from the program, and I still learning from Transform. It really energized me, if I can put it that way.
It's wonderful. Same. Is there anything you would like to add?
Yes, I want to add something to make an advocacy at continental level, at the AU level, and also at regional level through the different RECs, the regional economic community. I think they have a very important role to play, not only for Transform, but social protection extension. I think the AU should really take some lead also in terms of, I don't know, I have the feeling that maybe they are not aware, but maybe they are aware, but I think they need more commitment in terms of Transform, because I think they can make a strong advocacy to the member states for more commitment in terms of funding, in terms of leadership for social protection development through Transform.
That's an important call out to AU. So we hope that they're going to listen to this podcast and hear your cry, the cry from a master trainer and expert who knows that we need that engagement. Thank you so much, Ali. Thank you for your input today. Thank you for listening to the first episode of the Transform podcast. In the next episode, we will explore how Transform has promoted a culture of social protection through the experience of practitioners in Mozambique and Zambia. You do not want to miss it. Transform is an interagency initiative coordinated by the International Labour Organization. The Transform Hub is funded by Irish Aid and is based in Zambia. You can learn more about Transform and its partners, reach out to the Hub, and explore the training materials on the website transformsp.org.